What if public speaking could be an inspiring experience for you instead of a nerve-wracking one? What if instead of one of fear and competition, your experience as a public speaker was filled with heart-to-heart conversations? My guest today is Lauri Smith. She's a public speaking and leadership coach. Lauri's on a mission to help visionaries do their part to change the world. She enables people to stand in their power, speak their truth, and lead with courage and authenticity. Welcome to my show, Lauri.
Thank you.
What inspired you to become a speaking coach?
Well, how much time do we have?
As
Um,
long as you need.
I will say it's probably been a lifelong journey for me. And there were two kind of key moments. One is not as interesting as the other. I was studying for my coaching exam, and I called up an old boss of mine from when I was an executive assistant. And I gave him a coaching session, and he gave me
This is life coaching?
Yes. Yeah. Life coaching at the Coactive Training Institute, formerly the Coaches Training Institute. I wanted to make myself nervous for the exam. So I called up this old boss and I gave him a session, and he gave me a lot of entrepreneurial advice, including what's your niche? And he said, you were always very fit. What about something with fitness? And I went, no, but I might be able to bring together speaking and coaching and leadership, all, my wisdom with the theater for speaking. And that was kind of when the business going in that direction was born.
Well, that's what's in your heart. Like if you had theater, you were used to performing, like speaking, acting. So being in fitness, we all appreciate someone helps us get in good shape. Mine was healthy living spaces, but that's not my heart.
Yeah.
Makes total sense.
Yeah. And there was that moment. I remember going hiking with a friend and saying, I'm thinking about doing something with voice for speakers. And she did a double take on the trail. Like there were these moments of that's striking a chord that's different than other niche ideas. And when I look back now, there was a moment when I was in my favorite acting class ever that, in a way, without me knowing it at the time, was also at the heart of what I do. Because there are a lot of actors and directors and theater people out there who do public speaking coaching, and they don't all call it a soul-stirring, transformative experience.
What do they think it's supposed to be?
I had a colleague who was a casting director, not an actor, and she thrived on helping people just go from where you're at, and I'll help you get ready for the next big moment. But you're not actually going to improve your skills. We're going to take you from where you are, and we're going to package it up, and you're going to be ready.
Oh, I see.
Because
just to get the speech done with, here's the bare minimum basics.
Yeah.
But not the inspiring, like standing ovation, like people, the whole performance. Like, for example, on your website, you use your theater background to explain how you coach, how people should look at public speaking. You say there's 3 roles to play if you're giving a good speech. Just like in theater and film, where there's 3 jobs for a good theater performance. There's the writer, the performer, and the director. Let's start with the writer. Do you help clients write the speech?
I do, and I don't write it for them. So I feel more like a midwife, where I'm asking them questions and I'm writing down what they're saying. And the number of times that I've had people in programs or working one-on-one, they come in and people tend to be at either end of the spectrum. Either they come in and they say, I don't have a story. I don't have a talk. I have no idea where to start. Or they come in saying, I have too many things. I don't know where to focus. I don't know what's actually part of this story or this talk.
Mm-hmm.
And I, the first few
That
times I
sounds to
did
me
this,
like writing a song. Like I like to write songs, and there are people who will want to put their whole life history into a song. I'm like, we have three verses. It's a story.
yeah,
Tell me the beginning, the middle, and the end.
of this
And
one. Yeah.
there's a lot of the good stuff, right? Like your speaking clients, there's a lot of the good things they want to say. You just tell them make another speech, make three or four speeches, right?
Yes. Yes. And I will ask them questions and listen and feel the energy of what they're saying, write
What are some of
down
the questions you would
notes.
ask?
Oh,
Like, how do you get it
um,
out of them? Just
that's a
structure it.
great question. Most of the time when I'm in it, it's questions that are coming out of the moment. It's not a
Mm.
pre-programmed.
Oh, it's like you're the audience. Like if I'm just making this up, but I'm imagining if someone asked me, I'm not a speaking coach, but if they asked me, what do you think of help me write my speech? As I thought of a question,
Mm-hmm.
I need to know the answer to that one.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a lot, if I were just trying to get them started with a whole talk that is sort of beyond their story, I might ask them what are the things that drive them crazy in the world? What is it that the world doesn't understand? If it's somebody that has their own business, what is it that other people doing the same business as you are doing wrong or they don't get? Because that starts to evoke something that is their unique perspective.
Yep.
And when they're sharing their story, I will sometimes give them an image of a dramatic art, a dramatic arc that I studied, that I taught in a scene analysis class. And then they'll start talking about how they don't have a story, but they'll be telling me bits of the story. So sometimes it's questions like, what was important about that to you? And other times they'll gloss over a moment, like they're just giving you the plot. And I'll stop and say, tell me more about that. What were you seeing? What were you smelling? What were you hearing? Who else was there? To start to get it to be a little bit less of here's just the plot points. And now we're starting to see the movie of their story in our minds or feel it if they're saying, well, it was a really cold, rainy day. That can seem not important to the person who's telling it. And yet, as you probably know, when we're listening to it, when you have just like 1 to 3 of those details, it starts to open up the experience for us as the people listening to it, where we're either watching it like a movie or feeling like we're in some sort of immersive version of your story.
But when
Um,
you say your story, say I'm giving a speech, uh, I'm a computer programmer and I'm
mhm,
giving a speech at some conference on artificial intelligence.
mhm.
And how do you weave a story into that?
Well, let me first say that technology, I tend to specialize with people who are on a mission of some kind.
Okay, so say I'm on a mission to make people understand that artificial technology it can be used like a to help you be creative. It's not
Mm-hmm.
going to take over the world and take your job away.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to make you understand that because you're afraid,
Mm-hmm.
robots are going to rule the world. And I'm like, you don't understand. It's just another app like using the weather app or if
Yeah.
you, the artificial intelligence is. So my
Yeah.
passion is, I'm just making this up, by the way, Laurie.
Yeah.
There's a lot of technology jobs out there.
Yeah.
I imagine I'm a listener. I have to go to work to my boss. And so it's a way to get ahead in the world, right? You want to speak at conferences. So
Yeah.
technology,
Yeah. So in that example, if that person were saying, how do I make them understand? I would say, actually, you can't make anybody do anything. I don't like the word influence. It's a very popular word in the speaking world. I
Sounds
like
like
inspire.
controlling. Yeah.
Exactly. I like inspire or invite. So I would say first, can you shift that to set an intention for what you want them to feel rather than make them agree with you?
Oh, that's great. The
What is it
feeling,
that you want them to feel?
the
So
emotions.
if you're a person who is really excited about the possibilities for the world when artificial intelligence is used the way you believe is right, then you might want to awaken curiosity, excitement, passion, openness. Pick one of those, and that's your intention. And then you align your body, your breath, and your energy with your most expressive self, which is the part of the speaking coaching that is the most like acting coaching. It's like, this is your instrument.
Yeah, we're in the
What you
performer now,
say,
right?
yeah, we're in the performer. And then inviting is inviting them underneath the words, through the words, in the silences, to join you in that intention that you set, knowing that it's their choice. And 30% of the audience might already sort of be on your wavelength the moment you start talking.
Mm.
So look at them first, and then start to look at the 30.
Do you have any example we could use to demonstrate this? A topic, a speech, or you want to continue with my AI one?
Well, let's, it could be your AI one that is fairly common that people have done at some point in their life is like a networking introduction.
Mm-hmm.
Those 60-second.
BNI, business networking, something like that.
Exactly. So,
When you get your day at BNI, you have 5 minutes. So this is a short speech.
oh yeah, let's even go. So 5 minutes is even better than just the 60-second introductions. So a fairly common one that works well in a 60-second to 5 minute, this is who I am and what I do, is hope.
Mm.
And it could be hope for you, or that I'll give one of someone that I coached. I coached her and I had my coach hat on. So I was not really like paying attention to
Right.
it in the same exact way as a consumer. And then I went to a sort of similar to BNI style meeting, and she did what I had coached her on. And I was sitting back completely relaxed, listening to it as only a guest of the group. And she was talking about Western medicine versus getting things that are more Eastern in their philosophy.
She's a doctor.
And she she was a body worker. And she said the same thing that she had said when I was coaching her. If you're feeling frustrated with your body, frustrated with your pain, frustrated with something, like multiple times, and I knew this, and yet I was sitting there and I went, wow, I just did what we talked about. I went from frustrated, hopeless. I had something in my feet called Morton's neuroma. It's like inflamed balls of nerves in your feet.
Mm.
And Western medicine had shot me up with cortisone twice. Second time it made it worse, not better. So somewhere between hopeless and frustrated or angry. And by the time she was done talking, I felt hope.
So she starts, there's a problem solution pitch too. Problem is, are you feeling frustrated? And then she led into her solution, the body work that she does.
Yeah, that there is another way. And to me, it feels like it's empathizing with the people where they are and then letting them know that there is another way. When
What
I'm
about her story
speaking,
though? She didn't fit I didn't see the story part in there.
I don't remember every little bit of her story because it's been probably 7 years at this
Does she
point.
tell her own story, how she got in to do the work, or when you say story, do you use an example of someone who was frustrated and had her body work and then was better? That kind of story she tells?
I'm pretty sure that she told a version of her own story. So a time where Western medicine had failed her
Mm.
and how she got better and no longer has this problem or is living with this problem. And then said, I became a body worker in part because of this, and I'm incredibly passionate about health.
Like I'm a rock climber, I broke my hip climbing, and now I work in an orthopedic surgeon's office, and I love my job as an assistant, helping them fix people's bones.
Yeah.
You can come down to our office if you fall off your bike or you're a runner and your feet are hurting, come to our office and we'll give you a free checkup, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can use part of my example, the second story. When I was acting in my favorite acting class ever, the teacher, Richard Side, was doing an exercise where on one of the days, everyone in class was watching me work instead of being up there with like 1 to 3 other partners and feeling like the other people in class, their attention is divided. And I kept pulling myself together and putting that I'm fine face on. And he stopped the exercise and said, whatever you're doing, I don't know what that is. You're like pulling yourself together. Stop doing that. And I said, I'm not that comfortable having everyone's eyes on me. And he took off his glasses and he said, then you've picked a strange set of careers for yourself. You're an actor, a speaker, a teacher, a leader. Part of you wants this. Part of you knows you're meant to be there. And that was another one of those moments that kind of cut through all of my inner critics and my protectors. And I knew he was right.
It gives
And I
you
also,
it gives you
yeah.
an excuse to not be scared anymore. Like you have to
Yeah. And
do
he
that.
held a really safe space. Like if you're a musician, you probably know there are spaces that you can go into that feel more competition based. And then there's like your studio where you're in it with the people in the room and it's safe to take risks.
Yeah, except I'm kind of maybe a rare bird. The more serious it gets, the more I'm like, I gotta go the other way. I can't compete with the seriousness.
Mm-hmm.
I just complete and people think I'm brave or an extrovert. I'm like, no, you have no idea. I'm a complete introvert. But I realize
Mm-hmm.
if there's so much competition and seriousness, the only way to stand out, and what do you got to lose anyhow? So I tend to go the opposite. And it backfires sometimes, mind you.
Yeah.
The host might not agree or like it. I guarantee you, people, if you do this, the audience will. So even if your host doesn't, unless they're the one paying you,
Yeah.
it's the audience that matters, right, Lauri?
Yeah. Yeah. And, I'm a big fan of serious fun. It comes from an acting book that I read years ago called Acrobat of the Heart. And the what I loved about serious fun, and they wrote it like serious and fun, one word, both
Uh-huh.
capitalized, is that it matters to you and you're having fun while you're doing it. And at one point in college, um, like a 19 or 20-year-old director who was like a year ahead of me said, well, it's called a play for a reason.
Hmm.
Let's get the play back into it. So there is this feeling of it's serious, it matters to me, but it doesn't mean that you have to like get really rigid. It's meant to be a creative, enjoyable endeavor.
Big question for you. How did you get over stage fright?
Um,
To get to
well,
this playful spot, how do you get over your stage fright?
I would say to me that's in some ways a complicated question, and there's one thing at the root of all of it, which is being comfortable being seen. Most people are thinking that they need to look the way the most popular speaker of this year looks and do it like they did it and choose the right word and wear the right outfit and get your slides perfect. And being comfortable has absolutely nothing to do with any of those things. It has to do with, are you comfortable sharing yourself and being seen as you're sharing something that is important to you? And in that acting exercise, when I said I'm not that comfortable having everyone's eyes on me, and then I leapt back into it, trusting him, I was actively releasing jaw tension. That was like my last line of defense. The protective smiles that we wear for the world. If you want to be comfortable in public speaking, you need to be able to let those go. The kind of armor in front of the heart.
How do you do it though? How do you get comfortable? How do you get relaxed?
Um,
Yeah, I don't know who would do this. Go to the bar before, an hour before, something like that. Bad idea. How do
Bad
you loosen
idea.
up and get comfortable?
Yeah. Well, you can warm up, and what I believe people really need is they need a safe space like that acting studio that I was a part of, where someone is holding a curated safe space for people to do what I did, where you're literally noticing that you're doing this and you release your jaw tension, and you might burst into tears when you do that. And the room of
Mm.
people that is with you is going to not be thrown by you needing to move through the tears. Working in small groups like an acting studio
So this
helps
is the
people.
practice, not actually give the real speech,
Oh, yeah. This is like the training.
the training. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the equivalent of basketball players scrimmaging.
Because
They
that's what you do. You're a
scrimmage.
speaking coach. So this is what you do with people, right? You have them
Yeah.
practice.
You practice. And I believe that there is magic in practicing in small groups, not just practicing one on one. For one thing, even in an acting class, it means that your body is prepared to have more people looking at you, because you didn't just work with your acting coach one on one. If you're going to do film, that's fine. Ish. I don't
Well, it's
know.
a
I mean,
different dynamic speaking to one person than a group.
yeah. And when you're doing a scene in a theater class or even getting ready to perform a play, you have your scene partners who you're playing with, and then you hit previews and you invite in a preview audience who's paying nothing or paying less money than your ultimate audience will. So now all of a sudden you've got your acting partner and your audience. When you're a speaker, the audience is actually your scene partner
Mm.
and they are your audience. So doing some of your practicing with a group of people there, whether you're on Zoom or you're doing it live in person, it's like now you've actually had the scrimmage. You didn't just lift weights in the weight room. You went
Hmm.
from lifting weights and ball drills to actually having the scrimmage with other people around, which makes you ready for the game,
It reminds me of their
ready for the speech.
like being Toastmasters. Reminds me of Toastmasters. Is that where you would go to practice besides someone being coached one on one with you if they wanted a group?
I run groups
Okay.
myself. Um, and I'm not a big fan of Toastmasters. I used to pull back on that. I believe that the way that Toastmasters, there's a reason I started my own company. There's a reason I started my own group. What Toastmasters gives you is, if you show up and pay your membership, you are going to speak every single week.
You get an
That's
award.
everybody gets the award, something like that. What it doesn't have is you don't know from one Toastmasters chapter to the next if there's any safety happening there. It's very rigid. It's very focused on what you say. It's more like the equivalent of community theater, which is a beautiful thing. There's community theater, there's semi-professional theater, there's getting a master's degree in theater, there's Broadway.
Hmm.
Toastmasters is more of the community theater. It's a low investment experience for people. What you don't have is somebody actually watching you and noticing what will help take you to another level. Just like if I watch a video of Steph Curry shooting a basketball and somebody gives
There's
me,
no coach there,
there's no coach there.
leader.
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
what are some common mistakes speakers make, and how do you help them correct them?
Yeah. Um, they think it's like they're following an outside in path. I have to get my slides perfect. I have to say the right words, the perfect words. I have to wear the right outfit. I have to copy the style of speaker who's popular right now. Do I need to be funny? So without realizing it, they are putting on a mask of what they think they need to be and
That's
then
a good point. Like you
wondering
don't need any
why.
slides, or you could have a lot of slides depending on what you're presenting on.
Yeah, you don't need any slides. You can have your slides and they can work like a piece of theater, where the slides and you are working together to create an experience. But you getting better has nothing to do with those slides.
Hmm.
Um,
You should never read your slides verbatim.
yeah, people will try, for a while there. Tony Robbins is one of my favorite examples because for a while he was the most popular speaker in the world. It is really a mistake for anyone to try to speak like Tony Robbins.
How does he
Tony
speak?
Robbins, he is one of the most extroverted. He was, I mean, he's older now and I haven't seen him in a while, but when he was like the icon of great public speaking, he's an incredibly tall, incredibly high sensation seeking, high
He's got the
energy person.
fireworks going and the loud music and everything else, which is why you walk
Yeah.
out of there and you're like, I felt good when I was in there, but I have no idea what I took away from that.
Yeah. What did I just do? So if you, having described yourself as an introvert, if someone tells you, well, you need to be more expressive, you need to use your hands more, you need to get up and jump up and down on tables, that makes me cringe because they're saying you need to do it his way because they
Yeah.
think the way he's doing it is the only kind of charisma instead of that's Tony Robbins's charisma. And Tony Robbins is the only Tony Robbins that there is.
And on the flip side, I think he's deceased now. Bob Proctor. Bob Proctor,
Oh, I don't know him.
he wrote a bunch of good self-help books. He was the complete opposite. He would stand
Mm-hmm.
behind the podium, calm, and he would get his message across.
Yeah.
You got his message. And he was being himself.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, because I think a lot of people, including myself, forget you don't need to. It's really emphasized by a lot of, besides people, not you, because you're a professional, but other people trying to do coaching on speaking, like, yeah, you gotta get all
Yeah.
dynamic and crazy and written, excited and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah. Right down to formulas where, they're telling you at what point in your talk you should insert a laugh.
Yeah, or a joke or stuff like
Yeah,
that.
you should insert a joke to get a laugh. And that may not be your style. I mean, it's not my style. I have times where I'm funny, but my kind of funny is not like a strategized, pre planned funny. It's like I'm quirky and wacky.
Yeah,
And when I'm being me, all of a sudden the audience might open up and giggle a little bit, but it wasn't something that I decided I would say this thing at this time to get them to laugh.
right. How do you how do you advise speakers to handle difficult questions or interruptions from the audience or just difficult where it catches them off guard?
The intention is going to help. So going into the situation believing that the person has become curious and that's why they're asking the question, that like
Hmm.
your intention is working and they're now inspired enough to ask you questions. Um, Also breathe. So when somebody asks you a question that you weren't expecting, instead of feeling like you need to have your answer all packaged up, go ahead and inspire some air and see what thoughts you get inspired with. And the other thing is, if you're the one speaking, you're kind of you're you're the person holding the space, like my acting instructor was for me, like I do for people. You are the leader that's holding the space. Make it about the experience for everyone in the room. So rather than getting a question that feels a little attacking and immediately going, oh my God, I wasn't prepared for this question, I think I'm going to look stupid. Is that question, is answering it the right thing to do for the experience that you're creating for the 90 people that are in that room that day? And then answer based on what is the best thing for the 90 people in the room that day, rather than thinking that you have to answer.
Oh, that reminds me. So I forget, I used to, when I was starting public speaking myself, had some canned responses. So we didn't have to think like, if it's inappropriate question, what would you say if it was just, and in a nice way, that, but it's not relevant.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know the answer either, or maybe you do, but it's totally off topic,
Yeah.
tangent. Like it's a that's a good example. It's tangent.
Yeah. Yeah. If it were me, I would probably say, oh, that's an amazing question. And I would love to go on a tangent and answer that for like an hour. And why don't you and I meet up after this is over? And I'll do a shorter version of that tangent with you. And in the interest of time, I'm going to come back here for the rest of the group because I can go, that's a very authentic response because I can go, it's authentic. And I'm also not doing it for the sake of the group.
Plus, if you don't know the answer, you don't have to admit it right then.
Yeah. Or I might just say, you know what? I don't know the answer, but I know where to get it. Because authenticity is one of my top values, and I'm okay not knowing everything. So I might say, I don't know the answer to that, and I know where to get it. So, come find me afterwards and I'll point you to the person who has the answer, or I'll look it up, or whatever is
Or
the
just
truth.
tell them, go check out, here's some website or here's something else you might find the answer. And
Yeah. Yeah. If I can remember the name of the colleague that I think has the answer for that in the moment, I would
right,
probably even say, who does know the answer is this speaking coach actually knows the answer to that question, and let the whole room just Google that person.
right. Do you do this? Because I do this if I'm giving a speech and it's a large hotel room. You know the big rooms where they merge a bunch of rooms together. There's a lot of people. Or actually, wherever I go, I'll get there early, 2 hours before when no one's there, and I'll do laps around the room. I don't know why, but that makes me feel like I will not be like all of a sudden, I'll be familiar with the room, more
Mm-hmm.
comfortable in it or something. Does that make any
Yeah,
sense?
it completely does. I don't get there 2 hours early. I do get there a little bit early. And the other thing that I often do, which I learned from a play that I was in years ago, I was in a play where I was Julian of Norwich, and the stage was like my cell. She was somebody who thought she saw Jesus or said she saw Jesus, and then she went into seclusion to try to see him again. I was playing that character, and they said, we want you to start on stage when the house opens. So 30 minutes before the show. At the time, I'm all irritated. I have to be there 30 minutes before everybody else. And what I noticed happened was a processing. So first I'm out there and it's like, hey, this is my space, which I think is what you're intuitively doing when
Mm-hmm.
you're walking
Yep,
laps around the room.
absolutely.
And then as the people came in, I got to process their energy being added into the space one at a time, two at a time, five at a time, instead of being backstage and walking into that tremendous amount of energy all at one time.
Right.
And I loved it. So then I started consciously doing that even when I don't start out on stage, when there's a set where you can kind of be there behind the walls of the set and feel the energy of the audience. I started taking some time to, I warm up on stage and then usually you go backstage. And I would stand backstage as the audience is entering and kind of feeling that energy growing, so that when I walk out into it, it's a little deeper when you walk out on stage, and yet it's not really from 0 to like 100 as you walk out on stage.
What are I think I t caused just a tangent because I'm imagining giving big speeches or mid-sized ones. What are most of your clients? Are they more the networking or work speeches? Who's the average person that needs to give a speech these days?
Well, when I talk about speaking, particularly in a post-pandemic world, we're in a different world when I say speaking. So being on this podcast with you is speaking. Shooting an Instagram live is speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Getting on a Zoom and speaking to 25 people is speaking. Getting on a stage with so that's a way of weaving that in there. And also, I don't really have a most. I have some people who have spoken to 300,000 people, and I've got people who are speaking to rooms of 10 or 20 or shooting videos where it won't be seen until later.
So in terms of the virtual stuff, what is different? Like what tips do you give virtual people doing virtual presentations to maintain the engagement with the audience?
One of the number one things that occurs to me in yoga, they say energy follows attention. So, what can happen to a lot of people when they go on Zoom is their energy bubble is only about a foot and a half big. It's only, I'll do it right now. I'm not trying to hold the whole room that I'm sitting in. I'm looking at your face. It's a foot and a half away from my space. And now all of a sudden I'm talking to you like we're sitting in a cafe and we don't want other people to hear. Versus having an awareness, seeing the depth behind your face and having an awareness of just how big this room is and allowing my volume, my body language, and my energy to be as big as the room that I'm in rather than the foot and a half from me to the screen. That's one of the biggest things that people do on Zoom where they get really quiet and very
Mm-hmm.
small and they're not their most expressive, engaging self because they're not actually really reaching the person. They're reaching about halfway there.
Yeah, it's tough, the virtual ones, I think,
Yeah.
versus seeing somebody in person in the physical space, the physical people.
Yeah. And when I worked and work with people in person, I would tell them, look at somebody in the back row first. And your energy, your body language, and your volume will follow where you're looking. And then you can look at the front row and you'll be including everyone in the room instead of kind of hiding in someone in the front row.
Do you do any vocal warm-ups, kind of like a singer would do, because you're speaking and you're going to have some vocal range and dynamics? Do you do any
Yeah,
warm-ups with your voice?
I do. I absolutely do. Sometimes I even sing. Um, because it's, fun and playful to sing. And it does help the speaking voice as long as you know, okay, when you stop singing and you start talking, you need to still breathe in the way that you were for the singing. And I often I don't ask my speaking clients to sing, though a few have over the course of the years, they've spontaneously decided they were going to sing as part of their talk. Um, Even things like inhaling air and then doing like elevators with my voice. Which again, some people out there will say you need to vary your pitch more when you're talking. And they want you to pre-plan. When are you going to raise your pitch? When are you going to lower it?
Mm.
I'm more of a fan of do a couple of those elevators. It's a little bit like taking your hands across the piano keys and making sure that none of them are sticking.
Hmm.
They're all working and it's in tune. And then it can serve the song. Doing a couple of elevators and getting your breath lined up as a speaker. And then you set that intention, and your instrument will serve that intention as long as you've tested all the piano keys of your own voice. If what you're wanting is to wake up an audience of people and even alarm them, your voice will do that. If you're wanting to calm people and lead them through a meditation that's very grounding, your voice will do that, provided you actually warmed it up ahead of time.
So we didn't talk about the director part of it's like a theater performance, and we talked about the writer and the performer. The director came to mind because as you're just describing what you're just which you're just painting a picture. I was getting a picture in my head. Uh, when you're giving a speech, whether it's virtual or live, in how do you read the body language of the audience to go, oh, I'm losing them, they're bored, I've got to adapt, be flexible, change. Do you do you teach your do you coach your clients how to notice that and then teach them what to do if that happens?
I do. I ask them to think of it like a conversation, which a lot of people don't. They're taking all the responsibility for the experience on themselves, and they're kind of not even really looking and just talking as fast as they can at them. So treat it like a conversation. Look at the nonverbals, see their faces, see their body language, and you're looking for signs of that intention coming to life. Rather than what most people do without realizing it is their inner critic is in charge. Their intention is something like, don't screw it up. And they're looking for signs of how they're screwing it up. So
Or for
shifting
validation.
to, or like, do you like me?
Yeah, do you like me?
Which is very different from, I want to create hope.
Or I get your message. It's you really
So
want
I'm,
them to get the message. They might not like me for the message, but they might get the message.
yeah, they might get the message. They might, understand something that you want them to understand. So you're looking for signs of that hope coming to life in them. And having a director really can fine tune. I often will talk about strategic pauses and intuitive pauses. Strategic pauses are ones where you've probably mapped it out ahead of time. That's more of a director mindset. When a director is directing a play, they decide that they're going to fade the lights down and it's going to take 3 seconds or 0. And that's mapped out ahead of time. The intuitive pauses are a little bit more flexible and depending on how it's going that day. And I have a thing that I do with people. I named it tweak your talk. So you've already got a talk, you're giving it, and maybe it feels like you're not as connected with the audience as it could be, or something isn't landing. That's really where I put on my director hat from the theater and I come and I ask for a video of the talk or invite me to come watch your talk. And I'll take notes, just like a theater director takes notes on a run through. And I'll say, you asked us, a very typical one is you've got 3 questions at the beginning of your talk, but you are clearly not actually looking for answers. Like someone told you to start your talk with 3 questions, and you're going, how many of you have ever gotten in a car accident on the way to work? How many of you have ever texted while driving? How many of you have ever had to buy a new car with no money? You did not give me the space to actually answer those questions. How many of you have actually gotten in a car accident on the way to work? Okay, I see 6 hands. How many of you have texted while driving? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
good. Less hand. Like actually let them answer you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll kind of, just like a theater director would, I'll say, we need you to give us more time here. It feels like you're changing the slides at the same time as you're giving us a really big idea. That's like the whole entire set just transformed behind your head. So it needs to be idea, change the slide, next thought, or it needs to be change the slide, big idea. You can't do both at the same time, or we don't know where to look. So we actually don't absorb either. That's the kind of stuff that a director can do.
What about memorization? Do you encourage people to memorize? And
No.
how do they keep track of what they're going to say? How do they keep track of the story and what they're going to say? Bullet
Yeah.
points. Or...
Uh, Bullet points, treating it much like an episode of Saturday Night Live. So it's like, for Saturday Night Live, they improvise and then they come up with, these are the lists of the scenes that we're going to do. And they've got some bullet points probably of different moments that need to be included in order for that improv to make sense. And then they spend the rest of the week going back and doing it again where they're repeating the structured improv. That's where speakers really shine. If you're a speaker trying to memorize a thing, what actors do to do that and have it come out as if it's not memorized takes an enormous amount of work. And you don't need to, because you're not playing a character. You are you, and you know your stuff.
How
And
many bullet
one,
points do you typically, because you got to remember your bullet points, or do you have a flashcard in your back pocket? How do you do that part?
yeah, I think
Your slides help
I'm
you.
stealing this. Your slides help you, and sometimes you might not have slides. A colleague of mine talked about the power of three for years before she retired. It's in theater, it's in what you said about a song. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. So, particularly if you need to talk without any notes at all, group everything into threes because we are neurologically wired to be able to remember three things. And she used to tell this story, which I'll borrow and probably butcher. When she was younger, when she was a kid, she had like the mom and the dad was going off to work. And the mom would say, "Can you pick up milk, butter, and eggs?" And he would go, "Yep." And then she would go, "Oh, and ice cream." And he would come stomping back into the house and say, "Now I need to write it down. Because milk, butter, and eggs I can remember for the whole entire day, but milk, butter, eggs, and ice cream, now I need a note."
Hmm. So your opening title and then milk, butter, and eggs, and then your closing, you can improvise the opening and closing probably. Or
Yeah.
so what about time? Like how, without looking at your watch, let's say you got 3 points to cover. How do you
Mm-hmm.
coach speakers to stay on time so they don't spend half the time on one or most of it on one and go, oh, I got two more to cover. I'm running out of time without
Yeah.
looking at your watch. How do you pace yourself?
You need to practice
Mm,
and you need to practice up on your feet, just like theater people. We don't just step out in front of the audience on the first day of rehearsal. And speakers may not understand that. So they wonder, like, well, I planned it out. It should have worked. Why is my body betraying me? There's nothing wrong with you. You just need to do it a few times in order to feel, where did I go too long? Because it's like you're verbally processing. So the first time, your first act might be way too long, your second act might be tiny, and your third one might be, oh, shoot, come talk to me if you want more. Of course, that happened the first time. And rehearse in chunks. So the other thing that blows some speakers' minds when I say it is when we rehearse for plays, and musicians do this too, you don't run the whole set without talking about how each song went. In
hmm.
theater, you do the first scene and you go back, do it again, go back, do it again, go back,
Oh,
do it again, and then move on to the second scene.
nice.
Do that a bunch of times. And then eventually you put the whole thing back together. Work on your speech like that. Do the first part and go, oh, I'm only supposed to have 35 minutes for my whole talk. And my first run through of the first section was 30 minutes. Yeah.
Does it help to practice in the mirror or to tape record yourself, put a camera on a tripod and or your phone and just record yourself? Is that the same as before you do it for a live group? A good
Um,
thing to do, help?
I am not a big fan of doing that. And I'll say this in two parts. Um, there's sort of the worst, the way I wouldn't do it is don't put on a camera and record yourself while watching yourself because that's not going to help you. You will not be able to see yourself when you're speaking in front of the crowd of people. You need to know how to do it from the inside without being able to see yourself. The other piece is for most people can't stand watching themselves on camera, even when they're looking back 2 days later, because their inner critic starts just doing things like, oh my God, my hair looks stupid. That gesture was awful. Boy, the camera really does add 10 pounds.
Yeah.
There are a small set of people who can be the actor or the performer, record it, and then put on their own director hat and watch themselves and have the kind of distance that you would have if you were watching someone else. So if you can truly watch a recording of yourself as if you were watching a good friend, then I might say, well, that is recommended for you because then you don't need to hire a director. You can be your own.
If you don't have a speaking coach like Lauri, you have to find a friend or two.
Yeah.
I got to practice my speech on you.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's helpful, even if you tell them, I don't want any feedback at all. I just want you to be my test audience. The feedback will be
How
in
they react, their
whether,
facial
yeah,
expressions, their energy. If they go, "Wow, that was really good,"
yeah,
I don't want to
yeah,
hurt your feelings, so I'm not going to say anything.
yeah, exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
Is there anything we haven't talked about that you want to add?
Mm,
I'll plug your website in the meantime. Lauri's website's voice-matters.com.
thank you.
Voice-matters.com. And I think you have a book. Tell me about your book, which the book title is Your Voice Matters.
Yeah. It's Your Voice Matters, a guide to speaking soulfully when it counts. That book includes stage and not stage. And that'll kind of lead me into uh, I do believe that speaking is a spiritual path, just like money, just like relationships, just like health, where we are meant to find our voice more and more comfortable being seen and expressing ourselves, and to grow and transform and get better and better at it until we pass away.
Just when you're getting
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. So love where you are now, if you're listening, and also know that it is a way of it's growing, and that growing is coming back home to your true self through that spiritual fire.
It reminds me of, I don't know how many talks I've given, but it was a very, very, very long time, and it only happened barely once in the 15 years that followed that I actually put on a better speech than my very, very first one.
Mm.
And it was because I practiced, but the
Mm-hmm.
passion and the
Yeah.
topic and the
Mm-hmm.
audience. And I almost canceled. It was at the public library.
Mm-hmm.
So the space was free, but it was a topic that the community could relate to. So they let me have the room. And okay, I don't know if I want to do this. Like, I don't know, 5 people are going to show up. And I called the library. And then to suss it out, I was like, yeah, this is Daniel. Yeah, my talk that we're promoting, for this Wednesday at 6 o'clock. Uh, do you have any idea how many people would be there? And like, we have 60 people signed up. I'm like, oh, okay, got to show up for
Mm-hmm.
this one. Uh, it went really well. So where I'm going with this is because we mentioned you get better and better. It's like some bands will tell you, don't listen to our old music, listen to our new stuff. Well, your old stuff was pretty good, man.
Mm-hmm.
You had the vibe and the energy and the passion.
Mm-hmm.
And that mattered more than you hit the perfect note or remember the perfect line. Like if you're in theater, right?
Yeah.
You could forget a line, but if you improvise and it was something you could never do again, but it was great.
Yeah. Yeah. And in theater, closing night is always better than opening night was,
And
because
why is
it's the
that?
same thing that you're doing again and again and again. Because it's deeper, because it's richer, and because there's a piece of closing night that no matter how much you try to do it before, at least, I'm 52 years old, I have not been able to get myself to truly leave it all on the court when
What
it's
does
only
that
the
mean?
second performance.
Oh, you mean, what does that mean? Truly leave it on the court, like give it your best?
Like there's a different kind of thing that happens when you know it's the last time.
Hmm.
Yeah,
You never know when it might be your last time.
exactly.
Thanks so much for being on my show, Lori. I hope this
You're
helps some
welcome. Thank
people
you so much for having me.
and your links to your website and your book will be in the show notes if people want to find you, get some one-on-one coaching and aspire to be a better speaker. So I think everybody has something to teach everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody could use some public speaking coaching.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Have a good day.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye.